Yo, hey everyone, Andrew here, bringing you another video review, and today we're going to be doing Mr. Terrific, issue number 2. Take a look at this comic cover right here. Now, Mr. Terrific is one of the comics that I picked up for the new DC 52, but it is not one of the comics that I am subscribed to. Allow me to explain. There's two types of comics that I'm going to be picking up. There's going to be my subscription comics, the comics that I will read to the very end. I will pick up no matter what, whether they last forever, last for 100 issues, only last for 4. Those are the comics that I'm subscribed to, and I'm just going to keep picking up. And then I have comics I'm a little bit more casual about, like Men of War, or The Fury of Firestorm, or Green Lantern New Guardians, or Mr. Terrific. Comic titles that I really like with characters I really like. However, due to certain reasons, probably most likely money reasons, I'm not going to be picking them up constantly. I'm going to pick them up more on a casual basis. Maybe if the storyline looks good, or maybe if I hear good things about the issue, or maybe if I just have a little extra cash on my hands and I want to pick it up. The comics that I like, but the comics I can't necessarily pick up constantly. And there's a lot of things about Mr. Terrific I do like. One is I like Mr. Terrific, the character. See, this is a character that really doesn't have any superpowers. I mean, he has technology, but he doesn't really have any superpowers. He's the third smartest man in the world. An incredible intellect, and he uses that intellect to defeat his opponents, to outsmart, outwit, and outmatch any of them. And I love superheroes like that. I love superheroes that use their brain rather than a superpower. It's probably one of the reasons why I'm most attracted to Batman. In fact, he has no superpowers, but he has this magnificent amount of intelligence that he uses to save the day and defeat the enemy. Second reason why I like Mr. Terrific is because it has Karen Starr in it. Power Girl, whom I love. But unfortunately, she's not Power Girl right now. She's just Karen Starr, and I am curious to see exactly how she will become Power Girl, if she does. Which I think it would be very silly if she didn't. Lastly is, well, Mr. Terrific comics, just like Mr. Terrific the character, are going to be a little bit different from other superheroes in that he's going to have to use science and mathematics and all these other great intellectual things to defeat his opponents. He's not just going to go out there like Superman and start pounding away like crazy. He's going to actually have to think about it through a scientific way, using the scientific method. But no, they're completely different stories, so that gives us a great range of different stories to read, which is great. I'm actually looking for a lot of new, different things with this DC New 52. That's why I picked up titles such as Demon Knights and Men of War and Justice League Dark, along with titles like Batman, Wonder Woman, and Superman. So the question is this. Issue number 1 of Mr. Terrific was pretty good. It had its faults, but for the most part it was a decent first issue. Will issue number 2 be better? Will it be terrific? Or will it fall flat and it'll go on a steady decline? Well, you're just going to have to wait and see. So let's jump into issue number 2 of Mr. Terrific. Now, the issue picks up exactly where issue number 1 left off, and I'm not going to talk too much about the plot because, well, I don't want to give too much away. But Mr. Terrific is getting possessed by some greater power, and I don't want to really spoil too much for you, but this greater power is a villain known as Brainstorm. I'll get into him a bit more later. Mr. Terrific finds a way out of it and he regains control of his facilities, but not before he activates a type of machinery that causes seismic activities, basically causing earthquakes. So it's up to Mr. Terrific and Karen Starr to work together to find a way to turn this machine off, or at least to stop the earthquakes. In addition to that, Mr. Terrific needs to find this Brainstorm and confront him to keep him from hurting more people. What exactly is this Brainstorm's devious plot and plan? Probably to rip off Brainiac. But besides that, well, you're just going to have to read and see. So on to the good, the bad, and whether or not you should get it. Good. Well, Karen Starr, Mr. Terrific, Michael Holt, and Mr. Terrific's supporting cast, although small, are all better developed in this. Mr. Terrific has an interesting backstory. The backstory where his wife and his child were killed, and before his wife died, she told him, continue to educate the world, continue to make the world a better place through intelligence. And he's taken that to the ninth degree, the 9th million degree. And that's a great kind of a character backstory, and we get to see more about how that weighs heavy on his heart, but it's also something that he greatly believes in and that he lives for. Karen Starr is portrayed actually pretty nicely here. I like to say this is a good Karen Starr. We have a lot of the great characteristics that made Karen Starr good as Power Girl before Flashpoint, but we're also getting some new stuff, like she's a little bit more business savvy, she's a little bit smarter, which I always thought Power Girl was a smart character. However, in recent years, she's been portrayed as kind of an idiot. My favorite example to point out is when she worked with Wonder Woman in a Brave and the Bold issue, and she goes, "Me, open door by punching." Power Girl is an incredibly intellectual character, however, she's often played as a dope. I'm one of the few people out there that really didn't care for Judd Winnick's run on Power Girl, and there's very few times that she's actually portrayed correctly. Here, I feel as though that we at least have the foundations for a good character. And like I said, the supporting cast are actually likable, and I could see them being good characters for the Mr. Terrific comic. The story itself is a little bit better too. It's a little bit more interesting. It's a little bit more out there. It's not quite as carelessly written. It feels a little bit more streamlined. Bad. Well, the first bad is Mr. Terrific saves the day with technobabble and the plot convenience device. Basically, he happens to be in the right place at the right time, able to create the right thing to save the day. And what he creates is pretty redonkulous. So, it's just Mr. Terrific makes it look so easy, and everything was just so convenient. I mean, when you read a comic, you know Superman's going to save the day and beat the opponent, and Batman's going to solve the mystery, and Green Lantern's going to stop that alien. But at least make it look tough for the character. Mr. Terrific makes it look way too easy. Second thing is this Brainstorm character. Well, looks kind of fun and interesting in a Silver Age-ish light. He's nothing but a Brainiac ripoff. And to be fair, Mr. Terrific should have a character that foils off him very nicely. See, the great thing about villains and superheroes are they're the complete opposites of each other. They foil with each other. Look at Dick Grayson and James Gordon Jr. Dick Grayson is the epitome of humanity. He has so much humanity, compassion, and love, where James Gordon Jr. is completely devoid of it. Him killing a little kid is no different from him having a hamburger. He gets the same results. He has no humanity in him. Joker is this representation of anarchy, insanity, and just complete randomness. There's no method to him. Where Batman is cold, calculating, he's about structure and logic. Superman is about strength, representing the best that could happen into the human body, to the human persona. While Lex Luthor represents corruption, the worst that could happen to the human persona. Ares is a representation of everything that's evil that can come from war, all the bad stuff, while Wonder Woman is a representation of how war can be necessary in order to find peace. Again, these are all fours off each other. We have Brainstorm in this as an incredibly intellectual character who's fighting another incredibly intellectual character. It would have been better if we had a character that gave a more physical, dominating presence for Mr. Terrific to fight. A good villain, if I had to pick one out of the air at random, would be Gorilla Grodd. Someone that's intellectual, that can hold his own when it comes down to intelligence to him, but at the same time is physically threatening to Mr. Terrific. I'm not saying the Brainstorm character is bad, but he's a clear ripoff of Brainiac, and again, I would rather have Mr. Terrific fight some big giant robots or some evil alien plan that isn't with an alien that's incredibly smart. And on the whole, whether or not you should get it. Mr. Terrific issue number 2 was actually better than Mr. Terrific issue number 1. I enjoyed this a bit more, and I started to get immersed in this comic a bit more. While it is still not a perfect comic, and nor is it the best of the DC New 52, Mr. Terrific is far from the worst. He's kind of middle ground. He's good, but he has his faults. And I like the comic. I want to see more that happens with it. I want to see what happens to these characters that I'm getting invested into. I just hope that this comic eventually, no, it will eventually hit its stride. It will hit its stride and it will be a good comic. It's just a matter of when. Will it be issue 3 or will it be issue 20 or issue 100 if it lasts that long? I do recommend people pick up Mr. Terrific if they want to try something new but still have a traditional superhero. In other words, if they are used to reading Batman, Green Lantern, Flash, but they want to try something new, but not as radical as, say, Men of War or Demon Knights or iVampire. They want to try something that's still a superhero, but a different kind of superhero, and Mr. Terrific will give that. On the whole, this was a good issue, and I give it a solid 3.5 out of 5 stars. So with that said, I'm going to end this review here. Mr. Terrific wasn't quite terrific, but it was still pretty damn good. This is Andrew saying, peace out for now.